Alright everyone, welcome back to the channel for another Bitcoin update. So in my opinion, the next major capitulation to the downside is right round the corner. But while we're waiting for the price action to catch up, let's take a look at some of the oscillators which are already starting to heavily move to the downside. There's three things in today's video that I want to talk about. Number one being this RSI fractal chart. Number two being this weekly Stoch RSI chart. And then we're going to move on to something which is equally as brutal, if not even more brutal. Let's jump right in. So the first chart we've got, very simple yet very powerful, is the uptrends on the daily RSI. Now, what we're looking at here is three uptrends in terms of the price action. So you've got this first uptrend, second uptrend, and third uptrend, and these are all correlated to uptrends in the daily RSI. You can see there's no divergence playing out throughout here. You have an uptrend in price, you have an uptrend in RSI, you've got a downtrend in RSI, downtrend in price, downtrend in RSI, downtrend in price, downtrend in RSI, and downtrend in price. But what's very interesting about these, it's already been and gone, but what you witness with this is you'll see that the daily RSI called for the breakdown much quicker than the actual breakdown happened in the price action. In the first fractal, we were all the way up here at 48,000, and the breakdown wasn't until 41,000, but the daily RSI called for this capitulation much quicker than it happened. And with the continuation of the daily RSI to the downside, you can really see that we absolutely ripped through the floorboards. Now, in the second RSI fractal that we've got here, you can see another uptrend in price action, another uptrend in the RSI, and the breakdown of the RSI happened on this date, on the 9th of June. Coming over to the chart, you can see we broke down around about the 10th of June. Yeah, we broke down on the 10th of June. So this, once again, RSI calling for the breakdown before the price action happened. And then over here, what have we got? We've got a breakdown on this date over on the 16th of August when the price action was up here at 24,000. Now, we're already heavily rocketing to the downside. So in my opinion, this RSI breakdown fractal was played out time after time after time again. You can draw these a few different ways as well. I mean, you can draw these mostly as channels. You can draw these as bear flags. All of these are bear flags, and all of these are kind of just uptrends in the RSI price action. But what I want to point out for this one specifically is, in my opinion, we've probably got a little bit of the way to go to the downside over on the RSI before we really can be convinced that we would have bottomed. So in my opinion, we're in some situation like this. You can see when we fell to the downside of this trend, it was very slow, and it took its time to accumulate. However, over here, we almost instantly just catapulted beneath the support. We came back up and back tested it, and then we slowly drifted down. We can definitely do something like this where we start slowing down halfway through, but nonetheless, we're definitely in one of these situations, and in my opinion, according to the daily RSI, we should be expecting a breakdown very soon. Very simple, not much else to add from this one. Let's move on to the next chart on the weekly Stoch RSI. Now, for this one specifically, I mean, we could go back and we could look at every single time the Stoch RSI performed well, but to make this as quick, clear, concise, and to kind of take away any chance of cherry picking, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this specifically, and I'm going to judge its hit rate based on this current market cycle. So we won't be looking at the Stoch RSI past the 10th of December 2018. Why are we not looking at it before this date? Because this was the previous cycle. This is when the bear market low was in, so this is the new cycle. So we're going to be looking at how the Stoch RSI performed in this cycle and see if we should be worried that the Stoch RSI might be close to topping out right now. So right off the back, you can see Stoch RSI started to top out, but it didn't break down, and it didn't break down until this area over here, starting around about that 1st of July region. And what do you know? This was the top over in the price action. We proceeded to move back down to the downside very heavily. We bounced all the way back up on the Stoch RSI, and what do you know? This was a lower high, and this was also another phase where Stoch RSI started to roll down and the price majorly capitulated. So far we're 2 for 2 over on this this area here. Now you can mark this as two different areas. I'm just going to mark it from the top here because, as you can see, this was definitely the same move. And what you notice with this, while it doesn't look like a major move took place. This is because we're on the higher time frames using the logarithmic growth curve scale. This was a 22-23% move, maybe slightly more if I was zooming in and looking at the daily. But once again, this was another perfect hit rate. As soon as the Stoch RSI came up to this level and started to move back down again, we knew that that was the time to short. That was the time to sit on the sidelines. And as you can see here, you may be thinking this was only a small move before we blasted back up, but the Stoch RSI went to the oversold region and it would have said, hey, buy back at 20, 23, 24% cheaper. So this was definitely a dub over here. Now, one thing that I would say is this area over here completely miscalled what was happening on the Stoch RSI. Now, sometimes the Stoch RSI can be a little bit sticky. It doesn't always work, which is why I at least recommend that if you're using it, you use the 2-day Stoch RSI, 3-day Stoch RSI. I prefer to use the weekly. If you go down to the daily, you just really see a whole lot of nonsense. But nonetheless, what you can see over on this time is it really didn't work too well. It didn't work too well at all, if I'm being honest. So this was a fail. The Stoch RSI did not work over here. You can clearly see that we continued to move up to the upside even after all of that happened. Now, let's move on to our next event. So we came all the way back down, we came all the way back up, and we had one top over here. And we had a second top over here, and these both correlate to a peak here. You had a major flush back down to the downside. Once again, Stoch RSI bottomed and told you to buy back in before the next move back up. As the Stoch RSI started to roll back down to the downside, the all-time high was in. So Stoch RSI called for this top absolutely beautifully. Now, with the Stoch RSI, it is really a higher time, well, especially on the weekly time frame, it is a higher time frame moving average, oscillator, whatever you want to call it. But what you can see is it really didn't tell you that this was going to bounce in the lower time frames. This was a really, really small bounce. But for these higher time frame bounces where you have this massive elongated bear flag, really like what we've got going out here. This bear flag and this bear flag are very, very similar. But you can see also over here, Stoch RSI on the weekly perfectly called the top. And at this moment in time, I'm not saying that it's topped out at this very moment because it has yet to cross bearish, but the price action is drastically heading to the downside. And you can see how quickly, you know, the top was in here. The next week, we started snapping to the downside very, very quickly. And that was all she wrote. The week after that, we had long crossed bearish. So in my opinion, coming into the opening of the Stoch RSI in next week, so on Monday, I think it's very, very likely if we have not yet crossed bearish, we're going to be at a phase like this where we're going to be so close for these two moving averages to cross each other again. So with that being said, I would be saying that this looks like a top formation over on the Stoch RSI on the weekly, and at least based on what we've got before, you can see it's got a decent hit rate of calling every single one of these moves. Now, you can also see that this almost called the top over here, but what I'm really interested is looking at the weekly time frame and looking at these moments where we come up to the top of the Stoch RSI, rather than looking at moments where, you know, we kind of lollygag and have these miniature moves. So as we're having a big move now, let's look at how our odds are. So far we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different data points over on the Stoch RSI. 6 of them being this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one beautifully called the top. If you were looking at the weekly Stoch RSI, it would have given you a long time to get out before this major capitulation. However, on this one time, it was not correct. We were in an uptrend and it continued to go from 17,000 to, you know, 65,000 before it saw anything of a major pullback to the downside. So what we've got over here is the Stoch RSI, and with the Stoch RSI coming up to areas above 80, what we know is that it's got a 6 out of 7 hit rate. Now, if I pull up my calculator so you can figure out your odds, 6 divided by 7, and you have approximately an 85.7% hit rate. So I would definitely say the weekly RSI is saying, hey, there's more than an 85% chance that we're going to break down to the downside. The daily RSI breakdown on Bitcoin has already long been initiated. This is heading down before the price action started to head down. Like we said, you know, this broke down a couple of days beforehand, and it still looks like this has got a lot more space to go down. I think we're in a situation like this where it's very, very likely for us to have this, you know, we've already had the brutal leg down, but now I think it's kind of likely we're probably going to lollygag for a bit, come back up to the heartline, we're going to make a lower high, and then we're going to break back down. So for the price action, this could mean over the weekend something like this, and then breaking back down to the downside, which could correlate to something like this. But yeah, all in all, there should be a baby bounce somewhere around about here. Would I be longing it? Would I be buying it? Would I be even interested in looking out for the bounce? Absolutely not. If you look at the daily time frame, you probably will miss the bounce. I think this bounce is going to be very, very short-lived. So with the daily RSI, I would be saying on this chart, you know, you're going to start massively heading down to the downside in the immediate short term. We talked about this in my TA videos, but your 618 Fibonacci, this is your first stop, 20,500. If we slice through that like butter, 19,300 is where the 786 Fibonacci is. So based on the RSI fractal and the Stoch RSI fractal, it seems pretty black and white in my opinion that the breakdown is going to be coming very, very soon. Now, before we do move on to the final metric that I want to talk about today, which is actually an on-chain metric predicting a capitulation very soon, I also did just want to give a quick 10-second shout out to the MFI fractal that I've literally been talking about on my channel for about a month now. Because of this fractal, we literally called this capitulation from weeks ago. But if you are interested, if you are new to the channel, first of all, warm welcome. If you do want an updated version of all my thoughts on what is going on this chart, be sure to head over to my YouTube channel, click on videos, and you'll find this video yesterday, Bitcoin explosive move incoming. If you click on this, I've got most of my videos timestamped. So if you look at the chapters, you can see down here, 840 money flow index fractal. You can simply click on this and you can look at my TA on this, and you can see once again recorded this video at 23,000 something, and we made further updates on this about 2 weeks ago. We beautifully called for this capitulation to happen purely based on an oscillator fractal, and now we're looking at two different sets of oscillators, being the RSI and the weekly Stoch RSI, which are both calling for a capitulation. So I would say, based on all of the oscillators that I myself personally look at, we should be getting ready for a breakdown in 3, 2, 1. But with that being said, let's look at the on-chain metric, which is very, very ugly right now. So for the final metric of all today, let's look at the realized price. Now, we're actually going to be looking at both the realized price and the MVRV Z-score, specifically because how the MVRV Z-score is calculated is through the realized price. Anyway, it's basically just a Z-score plot of the difference between the market cap and the realized cap, also known as the current price of Bitcoin and the realized price of Bitcoin. And with this, if you're wondering what is the realized price of Bitcoin, it says down here over on Look Into Bitcoin. I'll leave the link to this down below, but the realized price of Bitcoin is basically the average price of Bitcoin. It's the price of all Bitcoins at the price they were bought divided by the number of Bitcoins in circulation, and this gives us the average cost basis. So typically, when we're looking at the realized price, what you'll notice is the realized price is this orange line on the chart. The black line is obviously the BTC USD price on a logarithmic growth curve scale. What you witness when the price action moves beneath the realized price, it has historically always been the bottom. I mean, if you look here, you can see we dip beneath the realized price, we find the bottom, we may come back beneath it, but we always do find that bottoming stage underneath the realized price. At this moment in time, Bitcoin is having a showdown with the realized price, which is really, really not a good thing. If we refresh this at this moment in time, you can see the realized price is currently sitting at 21,800. Now, if you're looking at this chart, you might be thinking we're above the realized price. However, this is updated once a day. So this is going to be updated at midnight. This was last updated at 23,000. And as you can see, the price we're at now is 21,300, with the realized price being at 21,800. What we know is that the BTC USD price is beneath the realized price. So once again, the price of Bitcoin at this moment in time is below the average cost basis of all Bitcoins currently in circulation. Another way of saying this, yet again, another spin on this, is that the average person that's bought Bitcoin, you know, if you take the summation of everyone who's been buying Bitcoin recently from the start of time, more people are in a loss because of the realized price, because once again, we're beneath this orange line at this moment in time. This is really not the place to be. When you are beneath this line, you are in capitulation zones. And I would like to highlight, we have done something like this before in 2011, where you broke beneath it, you came back up and you actually poked your head above it very momentarily. It's really hard to see, but you did poke your head above this. And then what we did is we came down, we made a low, we bounced back up, and we made a lower low. So there has been times when we've made lower lows after having a major capitulation underneath the realized price. So this is just a heads up for you, heads up for the Bitcoin bulls if you are still bullish for whatever reason. Bitcoin is currently having a showdown with the realized price, and if Bitcoin closes a weekly candle body close below 21,776, which is the approximate value, I would not be worried, because I'm already bearish and I think that's what's going to be happening. But if I was a bull and I saw us closing beneath the realized price, I'd start to get slightly worried. And how this correlates to the Z-score is when the BTC USD price is beneath this orange line. So when the price of one Bitcoin is beneath the realized price, this means that the MVRV Z-score is going to tick down into this green box. When you are in this green box, in this capitulation phase, it simply means that the market cap for Bitcoin is beneath the realized cap, or another way of saying that again is the current price of Bitcoin is beneath the realized price, or the average cost basis of all Bitcoin. So really not a good sign. This is definitely one of the more worrying ones. I mean, like, once again, I mean, we can zoom back here and see that in 2011 we really spent a prolonged period in time in this Z-score value between 0.1 all the way down just below minus 0.6. So this can go into the minuses on the Z-score. So yeah, that's really all I've got. Oscillators are calling for a breakdown almost immediately. I would be saying we should be having continuation coming, not necessarily over the weekend, because weekend price action is just for degenerates. It is the stock market which leads these markets. So I would be waiting for Monday before I would be saying that we should get continuation. I really think the weekends we're probably going to do a whole lot of nothing. But what I would be saying is coming into Monday, the stock market gets continuation. These oscillators are going to continue to get beat down. If we start closing weekly candle bodies beneath the realized price, and the MVRV Z-score is going to tip into the capitulation phase once again, and there's going to be a lot of fear back in these markets. So that's all I've got for you today, my friends, and as always, cowboy out. Peace.